Welcome, listeners, to another episode of What's the Day Live. And here we are today joined by Matt O'Neill. He's the co host, he hosts the podcast called Good Mood Podcast, Good Mood Show. And so, if you're wondering what the day is about, it's basically about happiness, as you'd guess from what Matt does for a living. And then the day itself, it's celebrated on 20th March every year. And it's been around for quite a long time. Before I get into the nitty gritties of the day itself, I have one question for you, Matt, before we get into what you do on a daily basis. Can you tell me, did you have any information about the International Day of Happiness before I asked you for the podcast? I
I
hope.
am I am so grateful for the International Day of Happiness. My true hope is that every day becomes a day of happiness in our lives. But a day like this on March 20th is one that can reset us if
Mhm.
we've forgotten to be happy in our lives. Because in my opinion, happiness is simply a choice of our perspective and has nothing to do with the circumstances that we're facing.
So, did you hear about the day before I asked you for the podcast? Did you have any information?
No, I was so glad that you had reached out because what a day to celebrate.
So, what did you think the day was about? What could it have been? What did you assume about it?
Yeah, my assumption is that this is a day that the world is to think about all that we have to be grateful for
Mhm.
and to think about unity and how we really don't have differences, but more we have a lot in common. And that can foster compassion, which is one of the key components of happiness.
That's great. So, the thing with the International Day of Happiness is that it's been around since 2013. So, for your information and for the listeners' information, just to tell them, the International Day of Happiness was decided upon by the UN General Assembly in 2012, exactly 12th of July, by a resolution of 66 by 281. So they decided that it was a day that needs to be celebrated to recognize the relevance of happiness and well-being in the universal goals, because the UN believes that happiness is basically a fundamental human goal, right, in everybody's lives. So that's how it goes. The story begins. It actually began with Bhutan, who back in the 70s itself had decided that they would like to go to a gross national happiness index rather than the gross national product. So from there on, Bhutan led this discussion in 2012, and it culminated with the recognition of this day itself. So,
In
uh,
in the United States may be one of the wealthier nations, but is certainly not one of the happiest nations.
I can say that about India too. Wherever we stand on the economic strata, but of course, we're not the happiest countries in the world. Obviously,
Yeah.
everybody
And
has
so
their own perspectives.
the book I'm producing
Mhm.
that will be out in November of this year of 2024 is called The Good Mood Revolution.
Mhm.
And it is this tug between ego desire.
Mhm.
And the ego desire is that we hoard money and that we are very successful because
Right.
that would enhance our survival, and that's all the ego cares about.
Mhm.
But the ego does not help us with happiness. So it's so funny. We think that money will make us happy or success will make us happy because that's what the ego keeps telling us that, hey, the better you do, the happier I'll let you be. It's just not the case. Uh, so the other side of it is this idea of well-being. And
Mhm.
well-being is recognizing that in this moment, everything's already perfect. Everything's already okay. There's nothing more that is needed other than what I have right now. I have everything I need. And that's that can't be decided by how much success we get.
So, thanks for bringing that up. I mean, even your book. Let's dive further into what you do. I mean, the Good Mood Show and the book that you're bringing out. Tell us a little more about yourself, so that even the listeners can.
Yeah, absolutely. So, when I was growing up, I, I was aware that people around me were not extremely happy.
Mm-hmm.
I wasn't extremely happy. There was a lot of arguments in my home, a lot of shouting. There
Yeah.
was emotional warfare being played by my dad. And then we had financial struggle. And so my young brain kind of equated that, hey,
Mhm.
if we had the finances, then we would be happy. And so I just thought all we needed to do was get financially successful, and then all
Right.
of a sudden everything would work. And so I went on this mission to go ahead and get really good grades, and then get a really good job, and then solve that financial piece we didn't have when I was young. And I did it. And we did get financially successful, but I was no happier. In fact, I was struggling with substances, with drugs and alcohol, like trying to figure out how to be happy when it
Right.
wasn't coming with the external success.
Mm-hmm.
And that's when I went on a whole new quest. And for the
Right.
next 15 years, I dove into spirituality, religion, emotional health, hundreds of books, went to seminars, coaches, meditated with monks, like everything you could possibly think of on what is happiness really. And
Mm-hmm.
that's where the Good Mood Show came about. I came across the work of a guy named Dr. David Hawkins.
Yeah.
In his book, Power versus Force, he outlined a map of consciousness with the lowest bad moods at the bottom of the map,
Yeah.
shame and guilt, and hopelessness.
Of
And
course.
then the highest moods at the top of the map, which love, joy, peace, and enlightenment. And that all of a sudden everything made sense. I
Mm-hmm.
said, oh, okay, so the lowest bad moods are things I need to figure out how to transcend to get out of. And then these
Right.
highest good moods are the ones I need to figure out how to live longer in. And so that's been my quest. I've since now compiled strategies on how to get out of each of the bad moods, and then how
Okay.
to stay in each of the good moods. And that's what the book is about.
So, talking about strategies about happiness, right? Let's just get into what you feel. Is there something that's your favorite that people can implement on a daily basis? One little tip.
Absolutely. Yeah, it starts with conscious awareness.
Okay. Yes.
So most of us live our lives asleep. We're suffering or unhappy, and we're not even aware,
Right.
right? We've just lived. It's like a fish in water that doesn't know that it's surrounded by water. We're living in a world of suffering. Everyone around us is suffering. Just walk down the street. Look
Yeah.
at the faces of people as you walk down the street. Just look deeply in their eyes. You see a sadness there, a numbness. Like very few people are like whistling and skipping and high-fiving and spreading joy. That's the minority. The majority of people are doing their best to have a very blah look on their face. You ask people, how are you doing? And they say, oh, I'm fine.
Just
They
trying
don't
to
want,
buy the
yeah,
truth.
we're just trying to get by. I'm hanging in there. Right.
Yeah.
It's because that's the water that we're all surrounded by that we don't even see, is that no one's really happy. And so the first step is conscious awareness. I create this. The simplest thing to do is the first thing I do when I wake up is I journal.
Okay.
So every morning I start with a pen and paper, and I'm asking myself, how do I really feel today?
Mhm.
What's going on? Am I feeling agitated? Am I feeling sad? And what emotions am I feeling? And what challenging things are going on? Because a lot of times we'll wake up and we'll be in a negative state of mind, and if we don't notice it, we take that negative state of mind into breakfast and then into work, and then we kind of create negative circumstances because we're not feeling that good. And by the time we get home, we're in a full-blown bad mood, and then we're
Mm.
cold to our wife, and we're not playing with our children, and this could go on for weeks, right? So I don't want that to happen. So every morning I'm starting with a pen and paper. It doesn't take long, and I'm
Mhm.
just asking myself how I feel. If there is a challenge going on, I write it down. So once you get the challenge out of your mind and onto paper, 50% of the solution is already there. As soon as you've identified the problem, most of the time you can already see what to do about it. So a very concrete example, last week I was feeling upset about
Okay.
I felt like the publishing company that's producing my book had given me a bad contract, and I
Uh,
was upset. And I woke up and I'm like, man, this isn't a good contract. And then being upset about that, I started to spiral, and I'm like, oh, and this person, they did something rude to me. And then that person's really upsetting me. And
Start
I
counting.
noticed, I was spiraling negative, right? Because this is what we do when we get negative is everything starts to become negative. We stack negative on top of negative.
True.
Well, I got to my journal and I said, all right, I'm just going to write down what's bothering me. And I said, well, the main thing that's bothering me is the contract with my publisher. And as soon as I wrote that down, I said, well, what can I do about this? And I'm like, all right, I can talk to my publisher and say, I don't think this is a good deal. And I sent them an email and I said, I want to have a discussion about this. And immediately I felt lighter. I had taken positive action. The other negative stuff kind of started to go away because I wasn't stewing about something I felt helpless about. I was taking action and taking responsibility for what I could do in the situation. And then my publisher replied to me. They got on a call with me and we came up with a solution that I feel good about and they feel good about. So that's the first step is just awareness. It's grabbing a pen and paper and saying, how am I feeling? And if it's negative, what can I do to make my situation better?
So obviously, so we get to the point where we have the problem stated out. In any problem solving process, the first thing that you have to do that you have to know what the problem is, right? But
Mhm.
I've been trying to get into this habit of journaling. I don't know, is journaling better at the beginning of the day or at the end of the day? Because one is proactive, the other is retrospective. And which one do you feel needs more success? Or because I've been trying to juggle it out as to when I should be. I mean, I'm a little lazy during the morning, just after I get up. It's a little, it feels a little doubtful that should I pick up a pen and write things out, or I'll just write it out when I'm ready to go to sleep, and then I have some time for myself to think the day through, and then I have the problems that were there that can be taken to the next day, or probably just leave them in the day that just passed.
The both, either. The
Okay.
the point is the point is not whether you do it in the morning or whether you do it at night. So one of my favorite authors is Ben Hardy,
Yeah.
and he's written many books, and I like all of his books. He recommends journaling at night.
Hmm.
And the reason he recommends it at night is he says what I should do is I should at the end of each day recount 3 different things I did well that day. So
Yeah.
that rather than saying, because our brain will say all the things we messed up, when we said the wrong thing, when we missed the shot, when we didn't get the sale, our brain will tell us everything where we are failing, because that's what it does. It's just constantly trying to tell us how we're not measuring up. So at the end of each day, he says, well, what did I do right?
Yeah.
And then he counts 3 things he did right that day. And that then puts him in a positive frame of mind. And then he says, hey, what would be my greatest focus tomorrow? And that allows his subconscious to work on that focus the whole night while he sleeps, so that the next day he wakes up with solutions already. For me, I'm the opposite of you. I have so much energy right when I wake up, and I am so exhausted by the time I'm going to sleep that I would never pick up a pen and paper at night, because I'm just so tired. I'm just ready to rest.
Mhm.
So for me, it works better the next morning to wake up and say, hey, what were 3 things I did well yesterday? And then what is my focus going to be today? And so that's part of my journaling process. I just reverse it from night to morning, but it doesn't matter which way you do it. It's either way, we're just trying to create a conscious awareness of how am I feeling and what is positive.
So we talked about journaling, and if you go a little towards the from a journal to basically you're writing a report for the day, right? Or you want to make something that you plan for the day. Now, the UN releases a World Happiness Report on every International Day of Happiness. It's been doing that for the past 11 years. But obviously, the this year's has not come out yet. The last one that came out, it did highlight the fact that the pandemic brought not only pain and suffering, but it also increased social support and benevolence. Now, there is some contradiction, obviously, that there was so much pain and suffering happening in the world during the time of COVID. People were stuck at home, people not able to work, and so on and so forth. But then there was also the social support that the government, the general public was handing out. Uh, where was, I don't know, how do I put this question through? So, where do you see the balance? I mean, where does this fine line go through? Like, how do you look at the suffering and the health uh, balance out in creating this general well-being?
Yeah, it's super interesting. COVID was such a great social experiment for all of us because one of the keys to good moods is relationship.
Right.
And in isolation is going to harm our mood. We are social creatures. We through millions of years of evolution, we've come up in tribes of people. We actually need other people to survive. If you took a baby away from their parents and away from all contact, they would die just due to lack of love. You
Right.
could feed them and give them enough to eat and enough to drink, but without actual love, we perish. And so the pandemic isolated so many of us, and
Yeah.
so many, and I have friends, family friends who died because of isolation. Literally, they
Right.
became so sad, so afraid of
Mm-hmm.
what could hit them that they isolated themselves from their family because
Mm-hmm.
they're afraid their family could kill them. And then in their isolation, they became sick and they passed. And so we can't isolate. We need other people. And so the UN's report is showing that happiness went up in some ways because we started to recognize, hey, we're all in this thing together. We need each other. I actually need to support people. It opened our eyes at how much we actually need to love and help each other. So your mood will improve as
Perfect.
you're seeking to help other people. And that's one of the keys to good moods is saying each morning, hey, how could I make an impact, a positive impact in somebody's life today? When we stop focusing on ourselves and being selfish and saying, what's in it for me? And start saying, how can I serve others? Our mood automatically improves. I don't know if it's a survival mechanism. I have no idea, but we get these really great chemicals in our brain of
Yeah.
dopamine and serotonin when
Mm-hmm.
we help other people. So I call it a glow. Every time you do something nice for someone,
Mm-hmm.
you get a little bit of a halo of glow around you.
Yes.
So if you hold the door for someone and they smile and say thank you, there's maybe a few minutes of joy that comes from that. If somebody at work really needs your help and you can see them struggling and you go to them and you do a really big thing for them, let's say you decide that you're going to go to their house and help them pack boxes for their move, like
Mhm.
you could get weeks of glow for doing
Yeah.
a really big charity for somebody. So we're rewarded for helping people and for being social.
And then again, even a general smile, if you carry throughout the day, it's said that smiles are contagious, right? I mean,
Yeah.
you came onto the show and I was like, fine. I mean, it's just contagious. And if I walk through the day with a smile on my face, or if I'm not having a smile on my face, I see someone having a little smile. It's particularly specific to kids, right? If a kid walks through when you're going somewhere and you see a small child who's having a vague smile for no reason, and then you feel like, okay, fine, if they can have a good day, why can't you have a just a regular day with smile throughout? So that's how I feel it does happen, right? uh,
Well, we have mirror neurons in
mhm.
our brains, and this is again part of our survival. When somebody's smiling, we can't help but mirror them and smile back.
Right.
Also, if someone's scowling,
Yes.
we will mirror them and we will scowl back. So you mentioned kids.
Mhm.
Fascinating. Children laugh 300 different times each day. Everything amuses them. Everything is funny. Like I've got a 2.5 year old and he's laughing all the time, like just hysterical about things and it's so joyful because they're so unencumbered by years and years of learning about how that's not appropriate, right? The same study showed that adults laugh only 15 times a day.
I thought it was 8.
Yeah, it's not many.
Yeah.
If it's 8 or 15, it doesn't even come close to how many times a child laughs. So,
Right.
so your mood is contagious, and what I want to be is a positive contagion. So one of the things I'm doing with my journal each morning is prayer. So
Okay.
I close my eyes each morning and I say a prayer of gratitude to God for my life. I pray that my heart is beating today. I say thank you. I pray, thank you for all the great blessings that I had from the day before and for the opportunity for today. And then I ask to be guided in this day, and I picture each moment. So this morning, I was praying and I had my hand on my heart and I had my eyes closed and I said, God, hey, guide me in this podcast.
Come
I
on.
really want to be a light to the people that are going to be listening to it. Help me say the things that are going to brighten up the world. And I just picture myself coming on as a light, right? And then I picture myself going to my meetings and being this joyful presence that's going to lift everybody up around me. And this works. Everything is created twice. We create it first in our mind, and then we create it in the real world. So if you spend just a couple minutes of your day visualizing how happy you want to be as you walk into each experience, those little tiny breadcrumbs you set as your intention in the morning will have you show up in those meetings joyfully, and then everyone around you will mirror you. They'll all be lifted. I'll give you some tangible results. So I have a real estate company in Charleston, South Carolina.
Mm-hmm.
It's a small company. There's 80 people who work here. I've been practicing this type of visualization in my leadership now for 15 years. That's how long we've been in business. For the last 4 years in a row, we've been awarded one of the top 10 best places to work in the entire state out of thousands of companies.
Congratulations.
Every year since we've submitted our name for top workplaces, they survey all the people who work in our firm, and out of thousands of companies, we end up being one of the top 10 places to work. And it's not because we pay better. It's not because we have more opportunity. It is simply because I have had an intention of creating a positive environment where people enjoy coming in, and then everyone else is positive, and then everyone else is positive. It's like this upward spiral. So if
Yes.
you don't think you can make a difference, setting an intention to be positive could change literally hundreds of lives around you.
I've seen this personally as well in meetings when I go to, obviously, now we don't have so many offline in-person meetings, but when during my previous job, when we used to have, even when the setup was bad, that there is a problem to be discussed in the meeting. If one or two people are smiling through the meeting, it sets a general mood that, okay, fine, even if there's a problem, we will find something out. And if somebody cracks a joke, that is obviously not, someone might take it positively, someone might not, but then you always have that mood upliftment happening.
I
Uh,
love a joke. I love a good joke. Jokes are great, man. So let's talk about meetings.
um,
I copied this strategy to start meetings. It's called wins and good news.
yeah.
Every single meeting in my company,
Mhm.
even if it's just a one-on-one where I'm just meeting somebody one-on-one, I
Yeah.
will not get to business until I ask them what's going great in life right now.
Okay.
So I start every business meeting. So we've got business meetings every single day. Every single one. You think it would get old, right? You think it'd get boring, people talking about what's going good.
I
But
don't think so.
I say all you have to do is share one thing that's going good in your life, either personally or professionally. I just need you to come up. I need your mind to think of something positive that's going on in your life, because from a place of positivity, all of a sudden we can accomplish anything. When we're feeling great, the problems look small. When we're focused on the negatives, the problems can look insurmountable. And then now, like I said, I showed him in that other example from last week, we can spiral into more and more and more
Yeah.
negative when you're stacking all the things that are going wrong. I want to do the opposite. I want to start every day saying what's going right. I want to start every meeting saying what's going right in our lives so that we can create more of what's going right.
But obviously, there are a lot of critics to this positive thinking or constant positive thinking mindset, right? People feel like, okay, you can feel positive, okay, but there are certain situations where you are supposed to look at something critically or just feel not positive, not even if not negative, but at least you have to be neutral in the general sense. So how do you tackle that? And I have something else, another question lined up for you regarding the employees, but then let's finish this up first and then we'll get to that.
Oh, it's such a good question. And that's why my book, The Good Mood Revolution, and what I talk about on the Good Mood Show podcast is not the denial or the suppression of negative emotions. That's what we're doing when we put on a fake happy smile, or if we, I've got the statistics. 25% of people binge drink on a monthly basis. 25% of people use illicit drugs on a monthly basis. 13% of people are using antidepressants. So like half the world is trying to just cover up negative emotions with artificial stimulants. The other half of us just don't even think about what's going wrong, and then put on a TV or put on a music, or distract ourselves with work or distract ourselves with exercise. We don't actually deal with how we're feeling. That's why we started out this whole thing with a journal, that I have to start by acknowledging where I don't feel good. That's why each day, and I don't care if it's at night or in the morning, you have to check in with yourself and say, how am I feeling? What challenging emotions am I feeling? What's really going on in me? And I used the real world example from last week, but every single week, something challenging is going on inside of me. Every week, sometimes multiple days in a row, I'm stuck on the same challenge, and I'm writing it down like, hey, I feel like this person betrayed me. Like, how does that feel? Oh, man, I just feel hurt. And I just write it down. I feel hurt. I feel like this person betrayed me. What can I do about it? Well, I know that continuing to feel betrayed is going to continue to keep me in a bad mood.
Yeah.
So there are methods I could do to kind of flip my perspective. Maybe I could put myself in their shoes and try to see what were they thinking. Maybe I could actually reach out to them and say, hey, I feel pretty hurt by this. Usually that's not going to do a whole lot of good, but at least I can communicate that I'm feeling hurt. It's not the denial of the negative. It's diving into it and dealing with it, and figuring out a new perspective so that I don't have to suffer from that anymore. If all I do is stuff it down and then take pills or drugs or drink to get past it, or just like say it doesn't exist and put on a fake happy smile, I'm going to die inside. And that's living unconsciously.
Right. So I'll go another step back to the question that I had in my mind. So March also happens to be Employee Spirit Month. Now, I don't know if you heard about this. This has been going since the 90s again. So another thing to do with employees' morale and things like that. Since you mentioned your company, you've got a team of 80 people. I also did a podcast just previously. It came out on 4th. So again, about Employee Spirit Month and how entrepreneurs are dealing with it. So what's your take on, have you celebrated Employee Spirit Month earlier before?
No, I also love the idea. Right now, my entire office is decorated in green
Okay.
for St. Patrick's Day.
All
So
right. Yes.
I love celebration, and I love spirit, and we've actually got an ambassador of fun at
Okay.
my office. Her name's Mackenzie Stotts, and her job is to make sure we're having fun in the office. And but Employee Spirit Month is great, but I'd say every single month you should be asking yourself,
Of course,
how
yes.
could we have more fun at work? At home, I've got 5 core values for my home.
Okay.
And one of those core values is O'Neill's have fun. Because again, like, we can focus on, we could overcome our challenges, we could, do the things that are going to make us be in a good mood. But if all we do then is sit down on the couch and watch TV every night, we're probably not living our most fun life. So focus on fun. That's one of the keys, I think, to living a great life.
Um, we've now come down to family. I mean, we went to the world, we talked about the International Day of Happiness around the world, we talked about COVID, we went to the Employee Spirit Month. Now we come to the family, which is the basic building block of society, as people like to call it. And obviously it is. You already shared one of your rules that you have at home. Would you be comfortable sharing them all?
Absolutely. Yeah, I highly recommend we all set virtues for our family.
Mhm.
Most companies have core values.
Yes.
That's my company has got 5 core values, but I think it's even more important at home. My wife and I, we have 4 children, ages 10 to 2.
Okay.
And with our children, we get only 18 summers before we launch them into the world. And then we just hope that everything we taught them is going to stick, and then they'll remember and make good choices. But I mean,
True.
really, on their 18th birthday, we launch them and we say, I hope it worked, that you're going to make choices that will be helpful for your future. And that, so one of the guiding principles that I learned was to set 5 core values for your family that they could just know by heart, that when they get into situations that could be challenging later, that hopefully one of those core values will say, hey, is this decision going to help me live the family virtues or not? And
Right.
so our first virtue for O'Neill's is O'Neill's are kind. And for me, if my children make a decision to be kind, and if they got a choice of, hey, I could be selfish and it would gain me something, or I could be kind and maybe I don't gain right now, but I'm going to gain in the long run, they're going to be pretty happy. As we talked about earlier, this social connection, helping people. Every time you help somebody, you get this glow of good moods. If we're kind, we're going to be happy in the long run. The second virtue for O'Neill's is O'Neill's are brave.
Yeah.
And a lot of times we're just scared. We're scared of taking the chance. We're scared of trying out for the team. We're scared of doing the podcast, right? We're scared
Yeah.
of putting ourselves out there because we could be judged. But if we stay small, we'll never become our all. So,
Right.
so this idea that O'Neill's are brave, and then I reinforce it. So my 8-year-old got up on stage in front of her whole school last month and sang a song with the piano.
Right.
And I was so nervous for her. She's all alone. The spotlight was on her, and she's
Yeah.
singing in front of all of her classmates. And then we celebrated her and we said, Cameron, you were so brave. Now,
Wow.
that's a lifelong keystone moment, so that later in her life, when there's something that she wants to go for, she'll have this as evidence that she can do something she's scared of and have success at it. The third core value is O'Neill's are healthy.
Oh,
And
yeah.
health comes in so many forms. What we eat, are we exercising, are we working on our mental health?
Yeah.
So are we taking drugs or not? Are we over drinking or not?
Mhm.
So this choice to be healthy, I'm hoping, will guide them to make decisions that will keep them safe and living a vibrant life
That's
their whole
right.
lifetime. We talked about one of them, and that is that. Well, the fourth one is O'Neill's do the right thing.
Mhm.
So the right thing is not always the easy thing. Sometimes we see a wallet on the ground and there's $200 in it, and we're like, man, I could just keep the $200. The right thing would be, I'm going to take this up to the front desk of the store and say,
Yeah.
hey, somebody probably lost this.
Yeah.
If you do the right thing, you're rewarded with positive karma. You know that,
Get to
hey,
karma, yes.
my integrity is strong. I've done the right thing. And then we feel like we deserve good blessings in the future because we feel like, hey, I'm doing the right thing. The
Yeah.
right thing will happen to me too. And so it does. And then the last one is we have fun. So we could be this great goody two shoes. It's always healthy. It's always being brave, always doing the right thing. But if we're not having fun and laughing and being silly and like playing pranks on each other, like, dude, life is missing some spice. So those are our home values.
Thanks for sharing that. I mean, on International Happiness, Day of Happiness, obviously getting these tips for living a healthy, happy, meaningful life, not just on the level of the family, in the company, for the world as such. And so this is something that obviously we all want to do, right? So for the listeners, I hope you look forward to the International Day of Happiness, not just the specific day on 20th March, but I'd rather hope that the world stays happy throughout the year and for the years to come. Thank you, Matt, for joining me on this episode. For the listeners, just if you like the episode, don't forget to subscribe and do leave a comment if you like to. But hope you feel a little more happy by listening to this podcast. We'll be back again with another day, another interesting occurrence that happens throughout the year you might not have heard of. Let's see. Let's hope. Thank you. And